When it comes to the history of movies, my favorite decade is easily the 1950s. Not only did the 1950s bring us movie masterpieces in the form of vibrant musicals, gripping suspense thrillers, and film noirs that showed the darker sides of life, but it was also the decade of the atomic age. Though technically starting in 1945 after the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the atomic age, which continued throughout the 50s and 60s, was both a time of optimism and economic prosperity on one hand, and fearful anxiety on the other. While optimism reigned over society in the 50s, the lingering fear of nuclear war and devastation hung over society like a dark cloud, with the possibility of nuclear war breaking out at any moment as the arms race between the United States and the Soviet Union was in full swing. Because of this, atomic age cinema was born, where Hollywood and independent filmmakers alike would make movies that would reflect those fears and worries in the form of monster and sci-fi movies. Films that would explore the concept of everything from alien invasions, giant monsters, giant bugs, science experiments gone totally wrong, what would happen if science were to be used for evil, monsters on the loose terrorizing whole towns and cities, or the effects of nuclear radiation and the horrors that could be caused by it. A number of these movies are also very high in quality, often jam-packed with moral lessons and thought-provoking themes and a ton of entertainment, whereas others can even be genuinely disturbing and heartbreaking. To offer recommendations to both those new to the atomic age and others looking to revisit these movies, I present the top 13 1950s monster and sci-fi movies. Number 13, Invaders from Mars. Invaders from Mars from 1953 is not only one of the very first alien invasion films of the 50s, but it is also one of the best films in the entire genre. The movie is told through the point of view of a young boy named David, who gets woken up one night by a loud thunderstorm. After getting out of bed, he looks out his window to see a flying saucer surrounded by a green glow landing just outside his house. You know, a young boy staring out his window and saying "gee whiz" while looking at a UFO makes the scene a contender for the most 1950s moment there is. He quickly tells his father, who happens to be a scientist, about the strange craft, and he decides to investigate. The next morning, he returns, but acts far more aggressively and short-tempered than he usually does, and is almost totally devoid of personality and expression. David notices a strange puncture on the back of his father's head, which he then points out, much to the dismay of his father. The boy soon notices more and more people around him, from neighbors to even police officers, all act bizarrely, and he very quickly realizes that they all have the very same puncture wound that his father has. The police, alarmed by how curious David is, then call in a psychiatrist named Dr. Blake, who comes to believe David's claim that everyone, including his father, is being controlled by aliens. David and Dr. Blake later get sucked into an underground alien facility occupied by tall, green aliens, and a leading alien inside a large glass ball with tentacles emerging from its shoulders. Alien creatures that David stops at nothing to try to defeat and save his community from an alien invasion. Invaders from Mars is one of the most stylish films of this period since it relies on green hues, vibrant lighting, and gripping cinematography with memorable backdrops such as David's backyard. The dreamlike qualities of the film, even going right down to the cartoony design of the aliens and the overwhelming green coloration seen throughout the film, give the movie an especially dreamy quality, letting what really happened in the story to be up to the audience to decide. Did this really happen to David and his family, or was it all a dream? The film would also prove to be a major inspiration for the wave of film directors of the 70s, 80s, and 90s that grew up with it, and especially inspired such films as Brad Bird's The Iron Giant, Joe Dante's The Explorers, and Steven Spielberg's E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Number 12. Earth vs. the Flying Saucers. Yet another essential alien invasion movie from the 50s, Earth vs. the Flying Saucers from 1956 begins on a high note, with the flying saucer flying over newlyweds Dr. Marvin, a scientist, and his wife Carol. Fearing ridicule from his colleagues, Dr. Marvin hesitates to tell anyone about the strange encounter. But chaos builds when Earth's satellites begin falling to Earth at an unusual rate, leading him to suspect alien involvement. Soon, a flying saucer lands in front of Dr. Marvin's satellite launching facility, and out come the aliens, who are tall, imposing, and wear distinctive metallic suits. Taking them for a threat, the military personnel at the facility fire on the aliens, causing the otherworldly creatures to retreat before obliterating the entire facility. After the short battle, Dr. Marvin manages to contact the aliens, and they tell him that they are the last of their species and came to Earth to get in touch with him personally, presumably to help them survive on Earth, given the fact that their solar system was destroyed. The aliens then demand negotiations with Earth's leaders, effectively negotiating their colonization of Earth, which the countries of the world do not take lightly, causing them to rebel against the aliens. Earth vs. the Flying Saucers is one of the best of the 1950s sci-fi films for two main reasons. The first reason is that in the movie, it is never explained whether the aliens were being truthful about themselves and their plans, whether they were the last of their race, or if they were simply just scheming and lying to the humans in their quest for world domination. This question raises an interesting moral dilemma for us as humans, calling into question whether we can even trust alien life forms that come to Earth, or if we should just outright refuse any and all cooperation with extraterrestrials in general. The second and most famous reason is its absolutely incredible stop-motion special effects of the flying saucers attacking the cities of London, Paris, Moscow, and Washington, D.C. These scenes of the saucers attacking the major cities are easily the best scenes in the whole movie, and feature such iconic shots including the flying saucer crashing into the Washington Monument or the saucer that flies into Washington, D.C.'s Capitol building. The groundbreaking special effects were done by legendary effects master Ray Harryhausen, who remains by far the most iconic of the stop-motion animators in film history. Mentored by his hero Willis O'Brien, the man behind the marvelous special effects of the original King Kong from 1933, Harryhausen would do the stop-motion special effects for a huge number of 50s sci-fi and monster movies, including It Came From Beneath the Sea from 1955, about a large octopus-like monster that terrorizes the city of San Francisco, iconically destroying the Golden Gate Bridge. 20 Million Miles to Earth from 1957, about an alien monster that ravages Italy, and 1953's The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, about a giant reptilian monster wreaking havoc throughout New York City, a film that would undoubtedly inspire Godzilla, who would see his own debut 1 year later in 1954, but more on that later. Stop-motion animation is a special effects technique often involving miniature figurine models being filmed frame by frame in a time-consuming manner, in that their arms, legs, and other features would be moved between each frame. When played back, each of the takes would play, allowing for the figures to look as though they were moving on their own. Harryhausen's effects for Earth vs. the Flying Saucers were especially unique since he had built miniature model flying saucers with compartments that could be seen moving as the saucers were in flight, adding a degree of clever physics to the flying saucers. Harryhausen's work would have a major impact on director Tim Burton, and a touching and at the same time fascinating video exists of Burton actually sitting down with Harryhausen to discuss the flying saucer effects for Earth vs. the Flying Saucers.
Well, I'm grateful they've lasted. Look, they've lasted longer than most A pictures of that time, and they were considered B because we made them on a tight budget.
Yeah, and that's like the classic flying saucer. I mean, you know, like there's been many flying saucers, but
Yes.
this one, and also because it's so simple as well.
Number 11. The Incredible Shrinking Man. The Incredible Shrinking Man may sound like a typical sci-fi movie, but it is actually one of the most emotionally charged and sophisticated science fiction movies of the 50s. The movie opens with a husband and wife named Scott and Louise vacationing on a boat when suddenly, as Louise heads into the boat, Scott gets covered by a mysterious radioactive mist. The mist leaves almost as soon as it arrives, but before long, back home, Scott notices that his clothes are feeling larger than they normally do, and he begins to have paranoid feelings that he is shrinking, a fear that his personal doctor confirms with X-ray imaging. Scott soon learns that the mist completely reshaped his molecular structure, making him gradually get smaller as time goes on. While the condition makes Scott a national media sensation, Scott's mental stability begins to decline as he grows more unstable and even tyrannical, especially when he becomes small enough to live in a dollhouse. Despite this, Louise refuses to leave him, offering to help Scott instead until eventually, Scott becomes so small that Louise can no longer see him. At this stage of his shrinkage, Scott has to fend for himself against their house cat and even a giant tarantula that Scott must battle in order to survive. These scenes serve as the main highlights of the movie and add an entertaining but thrilling edge to it, but the ending to the film, though I will not be giving it away, is one of the absolute most profound, beautiful, and emotional endings in the history of science fiction cinema. The film is based on the story of the same name by Richard Matheson, a prominent sci-fi and horror writer of the mid-20th century who would later become one of the primary writers of The Twilight Zone, writing such episodes as Nightmare at 20,000 Feet with William Shatner, The Invaders starring Agnes Moorehead, Little Girl Lost, and Nick of Time, also starring William Shatner. The Incredible Shrinking Man has garnered a significant cult following since its release, largely in part due to the incredible acting by actor Grant Williams, who so convincingly portrays Scott. As you watch the movie, you really do want to see the scientists help him by creating an antidote that they keep talking about, especially since we see the emotional toll it takes on Scott, and the heavy burden that forms on his marriage. The film would even be added to the Criterion Collection, a prestigious selection of films famously known for being the greatest films ever made. If there is ever a definitive list of the greatest films ever made, given its special effects brilliance and emotional weight, The Incredible Shrinking Man definitely deserves a spot. Number 10. The Blob. As far as the 1950s is concerned, The Blob is the ultimate Monster on the Loose movie. A Monster on the Loose movie is a particular brand of 50s monster and sci-fi movies, and is exactly what the name suggests. A monster that runs amok in a city or a town or elsewhere, and the humans do all they can to try to stop it. The Blob absolutely fits this description to a T. The movie begins with a young couple named Steve and Jane, parked in a lover's lane, when their romance is interrupted by a meteor that falls to Earth. Steve, played by Steve McQueen, goes to investigate, but the meteorite is found by a farmer first. The farmer manages to break the exterior, only for a bizarre gelatinous substance to attach itself to his hand. The farmer finds himself on the nearest road, where he is nearly run over by Steve and his girlfriend, who take him to the doctor. Shortly after, though, the gelatinous substance completely consumes the farmer and then absorbs both the nurse and the doctor himself. Witnessing the horrors from the substance, or the blob, Steve and Jane rush to the police department, where the police do everything but believe them.
Doc Hallen's been killed.
Doc Hallen, what happened?
It's over at his place. You gotta come now.
Now, wait a minute, Steve. Tell us what happened.
Well, I'm trying to tell you. Now, this thing had killed the doc.
Well, what was it?
Stop with it, kid. But it's kind of like a mass that keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Come on, Steve, make sense.
I know. Look, Dave, you gotta see this thing to believe what I'm telling you. Maybe the thing you saw was a monster? Yeah, maybe it was.
I don't know.
Meanwhile, the blob makes its way across town, swallowing anyone it could find, including mechanics and janitors. Determined, Steve and Jane rally their like-minded friends to tackle the blob menace. But despite their efforts, the blob only becomes larger and more dangerous as it eats more people. The best and single most iconic scene of the movie is when the blob attacks moviegoers at a theater. The famous Colonial Theater in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, to be exact. And a large crowd of frightened people runs out of the theater in one of the most iconic scenes in all of monster movie cinema. In the end, Steve rallies the town to bring an end to the blob once and for all, making for an enjoyable movie and one of the best monster movies of the 50s. The Blob has become a major cult classic since its release, often played at midnight movie showings and even drive-in movie theaters to this day, and has been referenced constantly since the 50s, including notable plot similarities and homages in films like Killer Clowns from Outer Space from 1988. Given how that movie also opens up with couples in a lover's lane watching a meteor fall to Earth. And even in books, such as one of R.L. Stein's many Goosebumps books, The Blob That Ate Everyone. Also, every year, since the year 2000, in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, where the film was shot, and where the Colonial Theater is, as mentioned, Blobfest is held, in which thousands of people from all across the world come together to celebrate the film, holding costume contests, music concerts, and even a reenactment of the iconic running scene. Number 9. The Thing from Another World. In The Thing from Another World from 1951, the US Air Force gets word that an unidentified flying object has crashed right outside a remote research facility in the Arctic. Dispatching officials to investigate, they make their way to the research facility, where they are greeted by the head scientist, Dr. Carrington, the man who first reported the crash. Soon, the Air Force officials and the research team venture to try to find any sign of a crash until they stumble upon an odd shape in the ice, lining up to create an outline. Using a Geiger counter, the team manages to find a large body trapped in ice, which is then transported back to the research facility to thaw. Inevitably, the creature escapes into the snowy wasteland outside after the ice eventually melts, causing fear and angst to spread throughout an already tense facility with Dr. Carrington, who insists that the creature must be captured alive and studied on one hand, and the airmen who seek to destroy the creature as soon as possible on the other hand, creating a tense conflict between the military aspect of the film and the scientific aspect directly opposed to it. While this severe disagreement reigns, the creature continues its reign of terror, managing to find and kill several scientists. even draining all of the blood from their bodies, causing the research team to speculate that the creature may be vampiric. Ultimately, the creature is revealed to be a tall, intimidating alien, with an abnormally large forehead and freakish hands that also possesses powerful strength greater than that of even the strongest human. With human and animal blood being found to be its primary food source, the team is wary but willing to stop the creature, though the opposing goals of the airmen and the scientists cause complications, leading to epic scenes in which the humans face off against the monster with every weapon at their disposal. The Thing from Another World is a masterpiece of suspense and cinematography, and the film, like Invaders from Mars, came to become a major influence for the generation of filmmakers that had grown up in the 1950s, and especially director John Carpenter, who paid a notable tribute to the film in Halloween from 1978, with the film being played on the TV on Halloween night as Michael Myers carries out his killings. 4 years later, because of his sheer love for the original film, Carpenter would remake the film as The Thing in 1982, even imitating the very same opening sequence style as what was in the original film. Carpenter's version is one of the greatest sci-fi horror films of all time, and one of the greatest horror films of the 80s for that matter, with graphic but exceptionally well done practical effects. Both films are based on the 1938 John W. Campbell sci-fi horror short story Who Goes There, about a research team in Antarctica that gets attacked by shape-shifting extraterrestrial creatures that can shapeshift into any living being, human or otherwise. While the Carpenter remake sticks closer to the original story, and while its special effects are marvels to behold, the 1951 film's mystique and charm make it easily one of the greatest sci-fi movies of the 1950s, and a gem of the atomic age, that simply demands a rediscovery in the modern day, largely in part due to James Arness's incredible performance as the Thing, a menace that stops at nothing to try to drink as much human blood as possible. Number 8. Them. One of the many trends in the monster and sci-fi movies of the 1950s is the giant insect and arachnid films, including Beginning of the End from 1957 about giant grasshoppers, or the giant scorpion monster movie Black Scorpion from the same year. However, Them from 1954 is easily the best of the bunch. The movie opens with one of the most shocking opening scenes of the period, where a little girl is found mute and in an extreme state of shock after seeing her parents get killed. After police officers call an ambulance for the little girl, they make their way to a nearby store that they find is totally destroyed, before they are attacked by a large creature off-screen. Large prints are then found by an FBI investigator, who then sends the prints to be studied in Washington, D.C., yet bizarrely, after analysis is done on the prints, a father and daughter duo of scientists specializing in the study of ants is sent from Washington to help in the investigation. Immediately afterwards, the investigative group encounters giant ants, though they managed to destroy one using a firearm. The scientists claim that nuclear weapons testing in the deserts of the United States may have severely impacted the growth of ants, causing them to reach the size of large vehicles when fully grown. A helicopter search later reveals a large ant nest surrounded by human remains, indicating that giant ants are not only growing in size, but in populations as well. The ants spread so rapidly that they even make it into the Los Angeles sewer system, causing the city to be placed under martial law as the humans race against the clock to put an end to the giant ant menace. Them features some of the absolute finest special effects of the 50s, and the paranoid feelings of desperation felt inside the characters in the film adds a more haunting layer to the film as, like the characters, the audience wants nothing more than for the ants to be brought to their end given the horrendous destruction they caused throughout the film, even right down to a little girl who had her entire life ripped away from her. With its shocking scenes, large-scale terrors, incredibly strong writing, and memorable special effects, Them is arguably the greatest of the American-made giant monster movies of the 50s, and its legacy only continues to build all these years later. Number 7. The War of the Worlds. The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, first published in 1898, remains quite possibly the greatest alien invasion story ever conceived, about a race of Martians from the planet Mars who seek to colonize planet Earth at all costs, because their native Mars was becoming uninhabitable. The original story was set in England, and remains one of Wells's science fiction masterpieces, and so it was only a matter of time before a film adaptation would be made, which would eventually come in the form of The War of the Worlds from 1953, with its setting changed from England to the US. The film begins with a mysterious object crashing near a small town in California, which the locals quickly investigate. Soon, after most of the onlookers return home, an electronic eye on a long neck emerges, which blasts away 3 men waving a white flag, killing them instantly. After more people are killed by the mysterious object, the military is sent in to handle the situation, but they are also annihilated. Out of the object emerge 3 spaceships with the capability of firing deadly lasers. The Martians then launch a full assault against Earth, attacking many of Earth's capital cities, leading to an all-out war between the Martians and Earth's armies. Regardless of what the world's militaries throw at the Martians, though, nothing seems to work, including an atomic bomb, which fails to destroy the Martian crafts, further worsening the predicament the planet Earth is now in. By far, the best thing about the War of the Worlds is its monumentally groundbreaking special effects, with the large green, uniquely shaped spaceships stealing the whole show, with their neat designs and super destructive capabilities, blasting away at everything in their sight. The whole movie is just an action-packed spectacle, and in color too, different from other key alien invasion movies of the decade like Earth vs. the Flying Saucers, which was later colorized but was originally released in black and white. One key difference between the book and the film is that in the book, the Martian machines are in the form of giant destructive tripods, whereas in the 1953 adaptation, the machines are hovering spaceships, with a new and fresh design compared to the usual disc-shaped flying saucers. The H.G. Wells novel has been adapted for the silver screen multiple times, but it is safe to say that the 1953 version, though taking major liberties, is still the best and most groundbreaking, and despite coming out a full 24 years before, would pave the way for Star Wars in terms of its special effects. Number 6. Godzilla from 1954. Godzilla is one of the most recognizable and important characters in all of pop culture. But the first Godzilla movie is not only one of the darkest monster movies ever made, it is simply one of the best of the 1950s sci-fi and monster movies as well. Released in Japan just 9 years after the atomic bombings on Japan that brought an end to the Second World War on the Pacific Front, the film begins with a blinding flash of white light that overtakes a ship full of fishermen. A flash of light so powerful it causes the ship to catch fire and sink, killing many of its occupants. As the film progresses, the primary human protagonists of the film, including Dr. Yamane, a paleontologist hell-bent on learning more about the mysteries left in the world, investigate the increasing number of mysterious ship explosions off Japan's coast and link them to a prehistoric monster named Godzilla. His daughter, Emiko, assists her father, but fails to understand why her father would be so adamant about being so interested in the continued study of Godzilla instead of destroying it, as championed by the Japanese people. Meanwhile, Dr. Serizawa, Emiko's lover of the past, is a scientist who has been secretly developing a powerful weapon of mass destruction known as the Oxygen Destroyer. A weapon that, once placed in a large body of water, such as a sea or lake, decimates all life in the said body of water by draining all oxygen. After Godzilla destroys the city of Tokyo towards the film's climax, Emiko returns to Dr. Serizawa and causes a debate to rage about whether Dr. Serizawa could use such a powerful weapon against Godzilla, especially since, if used by the wrong hands, the Oxygen Destroyer could have the capability to destroy the world. The original Godzilla film from 1954 could be cited as the darkest monster movie of the 1950s, given the proximity between the film's production and the atomic bombings, and the fact that Japanese society was still in the process of recovering from such atomic bombings, as the wounds were still fresh. Above all, however, the film stands as a protest against the usage of nuclear weapons, as demonstrated simply by Godzilla's rampage and its effects. The most shocking and emotionally impactful shots of the film immediately follow Godzilla's destruction of Tokyo, in which nurses are seen carrying stretchers holding dead bodies, doctors are seen using radiation detection devices on affected children, and a little girl cries over the corpse of her dead mother. The film's special effects are another key highlight, effects which saw Toho Studios, the creators of Godzilla, create miniature buildings, bridges, and miniature vehicles to accommodate the larger human-sized Godzilla suit made from rubber, which the suit actor, Haruo Nakajima, would wear. Nakajima's experience playing the role of Godzilla, having flames of fire surround him as he walked in a very large and heavy suit, would cause him to lose a whopping 20 pounds during the movie's production alone. Though, doing such a good job, he would continue to be the Godzilla suit actor, until his retirement from suit acting in 1972. The only reason why 1954's Godzilla is not ranked higher is simply because the film would spawn the longest-running movie franchise in film history, the Godzilla franchise, with nearly 40 Godzilla movies made since its release, including the recent Oscar-winning film Godzilla Minus One, released in 2023. The Godzilla franchise would cement Godzilla as a major force in the world of pop culture, making Godzilla transcend 50s sci-fi and monster movies, yet it was 50s sci-fi that helped create it. And it remains one of the absolute most essential movies from the atomic age. Number 5. Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1956 is one of the prime alien invasion movies of the 50s, and while 1953's The War of the Worlds could be the best of the action-packed alien invasion movies of the 50s, Invasion of the Body Snatchers is hands down the best of the slow-burning, sophisticated kind. The movie opens in a hospital room, conveniently enough, where a man named Miles Bennell claims to be a doctor and recounts in vivid detail the traumatic and horrifying events that he went through before finding himself in the hospital room. Miles explains that for several days before ending up at the hospital, he met with a growing number of patients, often patients who did not even know each other, all saying the same exact thing. Their spouses or family members have been replaced by identical imposters. Events take a turn for the strange when Miles and his girlfriend Becky are called to the home of Jack, a friend of Miles. Jack shows them a body he found lying on the floor of his house, originally found with no features whatsoever, but eventually transforms into an exact replica of Jack himself. Soon after, Miles comes across large green pods in a greenhouse that create exact duplicates of himself, prompting him to destroy the greenhouse pods. However, he comes to the conclusion that hundreds, if not thousands of pods are in town, and that every single person in the town has been replaced by an alien version of their human selves. Unlike their original human selves, the alien copies fully lack emotion, personality, and even individuality, lacking the basic humanity that humans have. Miles then falls into frantic paranoia, doing everything he can to stop the slow-moving alien takeover. But matters only become worse when he witnesses the mayor of the town, now obviously an alien clone of his former self, instruct all of the townspeople to take the pods to towns across California and soon, all across the country, through the use of large trucks and their personal vehicles in an effort to fully replace the human population with aliens, leaving it up to Miles to try to put an end to their plans. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, while being a monumental gem in the catalog of 1950s sci-fi cinema, is also one of the most academically studied sci-fi and horror films of all time, with allegories of a possible communist takeover in America being one of its key themes, according to different critics such as Leonard Maltin. However, lead actor Kevin McCarthy, who played Miles, as well as director Don Siegel, have both claimed that the film is less about political allegory and more of just a sci-fi thriller, though Siegel was more than welcome for the audience to come to their own conclusions. In 1978, the film was remade with Donald Sutherland, yet another remake of a classic 50s sci-fi film, much like John Carpenter's The Thing and even Invaders from Mars from 1986. Today, the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers remains a quintessential piece of 50s cinema, and also comes equipped with one of the bleakest and thrilling endings of the 50s at that. Number 4. Forbidden Planet. 1956's Forbidden Planet is one of the most significant movies of the 50s, even outside the sci-fi genre. The movie is set in the 23rd century, and by that time, as the movie states, humanity has succeeded in colonizing much of outer space, with humanity creating an outer space governing body called the United Planets as a result. The United Planets, actively investigating the whereabouts of a spaceship that had disappeared on a planet 20 years before, dispatches Commander John J. Adams, portrayed by a very young Leslie Nielsen, and his crewmates to travel to the planet and figure out what happened. Reaching the planet, known as Altair 4, he is greeted by a scientist named Dr. Morbius, a member of the expedition that had went missing decades earlier, who warns him not to land, but Adams does so anyway. On the planet's surface, they meet Dr. Morbius, displeased by their presence, who explains that he and his daughter, Altera, portrayed by Anne Francis, are the only survivors left from the original expedition since the other members were killed by a mysterious, unseen planetary force. Dr. Morbius also reveals that he has been studying a race that once existed on Altair 4, named the Krell, a race of aliens that was seemingly totally erased in just one night, 200,000 years before, studying them via artifacts. including an artifact that can radically enhance human intellect, giving Dr. Morbius unprecedented intelligence. However, tensions rise between Commander Adams, who calls for the artifacts to be sent to Earth, and Dr. Morbius, who is totally against any earthly involvement with his work. A conflict that is put to the test when they are forced to confront a common enemy, an invisible monster known as the Monster of the Id. Forbidden Planet is a masterpiece of dramatic sci-fi and was instrumental in shaping the sci-fi genre as it stands today. For one thing, it was the first film to feature an intelligent, complex robot lifeform. The robot, named Robbie the Robot, is the most famous relic of the film and has always been my personal favorite part of the whole movie. Its design is so emblematic of the 50s and is a fine example of just how imaginative and outright creative the science fiction movement of the 50s was. Before Robbie, robots in cinema were most often portrayed as more dull characters that would linger in the background, but Robbie plays an important role full of personality here. Being created by Dr. Morbius and using its own intelligence and skills to help the humans rather than terrorize them. Given its very cool design, Hollywood misrepresented Robbie on the film's poster, portraying him as more menacing than he actually is in the movie, strictly for marketing purposes, though still creating one of the most iconic film posters in movie history. Overall, with its complexities and well-written conflicts, Forbidden Planet is one of the most complex sci-fi movies of the 50s, and its influence would later go on to inspire Star Trek, Star Wars, and other space-centered franchises. Number 3. The Fly. The Fly from 1958 centers around a Canadian scientist named Andre, who finally achieves his big goal in life, creating a teleportation device. He first tests the device on small animals and inanimate objects, and, being satisfied with the results, decides to try the teleportation machine on himself, which he does without hesitation. A short time later, Andre's wife, named Helen, realizes that it has been a couple of days since Andre got out of his laboratory, prompting her to venture down and find her husband. In doing so, she finds Andre with a black cloth draped over his head and still wearing his lab coat. Shocked to see Helen, Andre communicates with her through knocking and typing notes rather than verbal communication. Andre reveals that he tried his own teleportation device, but failed to realize that a fly had gotten into the device with him, causing Andre's atoms to mix with the atoms of the fly. In the most iconic scene of the film, Helen quickly removes the drape to reveal a horrendous discovery. Andre's head swapped with the fly, and now equipped with both the head and arm of a fly, Andre is determined to reverse the accident for good. He instructs Helen to try to capture the same fly that went into the machine with him, since the more time that passes, the more the fly's instincts take over Andre's brain. For Andre, this very fact is a matter of life or death, which Helen takes very seriously. As time runs out for Andre, Helen does all she can to capture the fly to try to reverse the mishap before it is too late. The Fly is simply a superb movie and some of the best 1950s sci-fi that there is, given how powerful and moving the film is. Underneath the incredible special effects and horrifying visuals is a devastating story of a man's downfall caused by his own ambitions. Crushed under the weight of his own scientific prowess, it is especially heartbreaking to see the communication between Andre and Helen that occurs throughout much of the movie, and I can only imagine how Andre felt when Helen finally saw what his head had turned into for the first time. Already dealing with crushing sadness and a fear from being seen beforehand, The Fly would see 2 sequels be made, The Return of the Fly from 1959 and The Curse of the Fly from 1965, with Return of the Fly starring horror legend Vincent Price, a larger role than he played in the 1958 movie. In both movies, he portrays Andre's brother, and does a swell job in both films. Although Return of the Fly is more of the typical monster movie, shot in black and white, and lacks much of the sophistication and heartbreak seen in the original The Fly. Just like The Thing, Invaders from Mars, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and even The Blob, which was remade in 1988, The Fly would famously be remade in 1986 by yet another legendary horror director, David Cronenberg, with Jeff Goldblum in the lead role, with incredible special effects and a film that makes many departures from the 58 original, but still stands on its own. But the original film is a titan of science fiction, horror, and drama, and its impact on film, like its special effects and drama, will remain timeless. Number 2. The Creature from the Black Lagoon. 1954's The Creature from the Black Lagoon is arguably the single best monster movie of the 1950s. It starts off on a mysterious note, with an eerie fossilized webbed hand being found in the Brazilian Amazon, a discovery which results in the forming of an expedition to the Amazon to try to uncover the fossilized skeleton that the hand belonged to. While the expedition is being set up, two people that happen to be involved with the fossilized hand's discovery are mysteriously killed by a creature so far unseen. Once the expedition group consisting of scientists is assembled, they board a steamer ship named Rita and set sail for the dark waters of the Brazilian Amazon. Their luck seems to have run out, however, as all initial searches fail to turn up any fossils, causing the scientists to make the risky decision to sail even deeper into the Amazon in an area known as the Black Lagoon, where nobody has ever returned from alive. During this whole time, the expedition crew has been carefully watched by a prehistoric creature, a humanoid amphibious fish creature which continues to follow the ship and stalk all those on board, and especially Kay Lawrence, portrayed by actress Julie Adams, which the creature develops an interest in. Throughout the film, the creature attacks the ship a number of times and even manages to walk on board, both resulting in not only a drawn-out battle of wits between the expedition team and the creature, but also an absolutely essential film in the world of classic sci-fi and monster movies. The creature even eventually manages to capture Julie Adams' character, creating a Beauty and Beast dynamic that would be seen in countless movies both before and after this, such as just about every movie version of King Kong. One of the reasons why the film is ranked so high on the list is because the creature, who would come to be known as the Gill-Man, had become so popular following the movie's release, it instantly became recognized and considered as the last of the Universal monsters. Between 1923 and 1956, Universal Studios, which also released the creature from the Black Lagoon, was the undisputed king of horror and monster movies at the time, as they were responsible for bringing Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, the Mummy, the Invisible Man, the Bride of Frankenstein, the Phantom of the Opera, Quasimodo, and the Wolfman to the silver screen, resulting in still the most influential horror movies ever made, with characters that radically and universally shaped both the horror genre of movies and horror as we know it today. Since the Gill-Man joined the roster of the Universal Monsters, that makes him automatically one of the most important monsters in history, and every year throughout Halloween and media in general, he can constantly be seen with the other monsters, often in cartoons or even in movies like 1987's The Monster Squad, about a group of kids with an undying love for monster movies who have to go up against reimaginings of many of the Universal monsters, including the Gill-Man. Back to the 50s, two immediate sequels were made, Revenge of the Creature from 1955 and 1956's The Creature Walks Among Us. Revenge of the Creature features an amazing scene in which the Gill-Man wreaks havoc across an ocean-themed tourist attraction and science facility after escaping from zoo-like captivity, and even features a neat scene in which the Gill-Man manages to roll over a car. The Creature Walks Among Us took a new and interesting approach in which the Gill-Man is captured and essentially humanified through a surgical procedure, making the Gill-Man more human than fish, although it ends on a saddening note. All in all, The Creature from the Black Lagoon, whether right after its release and even today, is a high point in the history of classic sci-fi and monster movies, and a welcomed installment in the legendary Universal Monsters saga, and is a must-see film in the library of 50s sci-fi. And to top it all off, the movie was one of the first films ever to be released in 3D, which would have been amazing to experience in the theater back in 1954. Before we get to number 1, the following movies are honorable mentions. Number 1. The Day the Earth Stood Still. The Day the Earth Stood Still from 1951 is arguably the pinnacle of 1950s science fiction cinema, as it offered a huge number of flawless qualities in one film, including outstanding special effects and a touching moral that will frankly always be relevant as long as humankind exists. After a UFO lands in Washington, D.C., civilian crowds and the military alike all surround it, wondering who or what could be inside. While tanks and guns are aiming directly at it, a humanoid alien emerges, slowly walking to the people, saying that it comes in peace and with goodwill. Yet while the alien opens a metallic device, a soldier shoots at it, injuring the alien and destroying the device. As the alien, named Klaatu, lies on the ground injured, a tall, metallic robot emerges from the craft and shoots a disintegrating beam at the weapons and tanks, completely destroying them. Klaatu quickly orders the robot, named Gort, to stop and says that the device that was destroyed was supposed to be a gift to humanity to assist them in studying life on other planets. While staying in the hospital, Klaatu meets with a White House official named Mr. Harley and tells him that he had come to Earth to try to deliver a message to every single world leader simultaneously, a statement that Mr. Harley quickly shoots down, given the poor relations between the United States and other countries, mainly the Soviet Union, with the Cold War only just starting a few years before Klaatu and Gort come to Earth, something which disappoints Klaatu. Determined to accomplish his mission of sharing his message, Klaatu escapes from the hospital and manages to rent a room at a house owned by a woman named Helen, who is widowed, and her son Bobby, who has a strong interest in sci-fi stories and movies. A bond forms between Bobby and Klaatu, with Bobby even taking him to the National Arlington Cemetery to show him his father's grave, who was killed in combat, something which both moves and upsets Klaatu. Meanwhile, alarmed by Klaatu's escape from the hospital, the military is actively on the hunt for him, stopping at nothing to try and apprehend him. The complete opposite approach to Klaatu, who just wants to tell humanity to stop its hostilities and wars. After Klaatu quietly returns to his ship and manages to avoid detection, the electricity across the entire world shuts off for 30 minutes, with the exception of the electricity for planes in flight, hospitals, and other essential services. Klaatu causes this electricity disruption simply as a demonstration of what he could do, a carefully designed warning showing what could happen to Earth if humans do not stop going to war with each other. Once the military eventually spots Klaatu in a taxi with Helen, a chase scene ensues, and realizing his time is numbered, tells Helen that if something were to happen to him, Helen must walk up to Gort and say the words Klaatu Barata Nikto. Klaatu then gets killed, with his body transferred to a police cell. Heeding Klaatu's words, Helen rushes to the spaceship and recites the words Klaatu Barata Nikto, causing Gort to rescue Klaatu's body and bring it back to the craft, reviving Klaatu. Realizing Earth's unwillingness to reach peace, Klaatu exits his spaceship to see hundreds of people, including Earth's most prominent scientists, gathering around to listen to him. Klaatu gives a final warning, saying that he visited the humans because alien races all across the universe have noticed the uptick in nuclear weapons activity on Earth and the large-scale military conflicts that have taken place, warning that if Earth continues on its dangerous path, it will face total annihilation. Simply put, as a sci-fi movie from the 50s, The Day the Earth Stood Still is as flawless as it is iconic. Even just the very dynamic of whole crowds of people surrounding a spaceship and watching as aliens emerge from it was a refreshing change of pace from the usual saucer landing in sci-fi at the time, where normally aliens would come to Earth in secret, usually landing somewhere far from where humans could easily discover them. But here, the UFO lands in Washington, D.C. and captures the entire world's attention, let alone Klaatu causing almost all power on Earth to stop. The special effects are also show-stopping, and like Robbie the Robot in Forbidden Planet, the key highlight of the film for me was Gort the Robot, a powerful, seemingly indestructible robot alien with incredible powers. And the still of it, emitting the disintegration ray from its head, has gone on to become one of the most famous shots from any movie, and for many people, Gort has always been a key takeaway from the movie as well. The film's composer, Bernard Herrmann, who would later do much of the music for The Twilight Zone and several Alfred Hitchcock films, also revolutionized music composition for sci-fi films by using the musical instrument known as the theremin, the only instrument that could be played without being touched. The theremin sound, because of Herrmann's breathtaking soundtrack for the movie, would forever become synonymous with alien invasion movies and sci-fi, and is just one of the many reasons why The Day the Earth Stood Still is such a masterpiece. But perhaps what makes the film shine most of all is that the goal of the aliens was not to enslave humanity or infiltrate it, nor was the goal to destroy it. The goal was to save humankind from itself, since that may be its greatest threat, after all. By and large, as these movies show, the 1950s could very well be the single greatest decade in the history of sci-fi and monster movies alike. Whether it be alien invaders from other worlds, monsters awakened by nuclear weapons that wreak havoc across cities, or insects that grow to enormous sizes due to nuclear radiation, or science experiments gone totally wrong. It is no wonder 50s sci-fi and monster movies remain so influential all these years later. I just wanted to say that making this video has meant so much to me, and I sincerely thank you for watching. Growing up, as a kid in the 2000s, I was obviously raised in a time well after these movies were even being released, but all those nights where I would stay up late to watch many of these movies on TV have forever changed my life. I fell in love with these movies. They both fascinated and entertained me. And as I continue into adulthood as a film director who was influenced by these films, it means the world to me knowing that I might be introducing more people to these films, which is really one of my main goals. With that said, I really would love to hear what your favorite monster and sci-fi movies are in the comments, so I encourage you to create your own top 13 list. I would really love to read it. On that note, keep looking up at the stars, you never know what could be out there.